Hello, I'm back. I'm Kris. Okay, so this was a request. Emperor Majorian try to try to restore the Western Roman Empire. I'm trying to read it right here on the screen, and I was like, man, that sucks. I can't read it. And oh yeah, it's right up here. Stupid. Okay, so let's get into it. Sorry.
From our modern perspective, around the mid-5th century, we see a collapsing Roman Empire, a collapse that was decades in the making. Political instability, weak emperors, and barbarian migrations had seemingly set the course for the Western Empire's final demise, just 20 years from where the story of this video begins. However, to 5th century contemporaries, this decline was not an inevitable process, and the destruction of Rome was far from guaranteed. Defiant figures such as Majorian were in no doubt that the decline could be reversed. And even at a time when Rome was at its weakest, Majorian would show that it was still possible to recover what was lost and restore the Western Empire. This episode is brought to you by CuriosityStream, a subscription streaming service that offers thousands of
Anyone notice recently no ads? Because I went ad-free, baby. YouTube, you know, for 3 months. Because you guys were complaining. And I was too. But I was using you guys as the excuse. You're welcome. And thank you for me. I'm welcome.
Julius Flavius Valerius Majorianus, known simply as Majorian, was born sometime between 420 and 426 into a family that was part of the Roman lower aristocracy. The family's position was attained largely through distinguished military careers. Both Majorian's father and grandfather were capable military men and were thus well connected. His grandfather was close to Emperor Theodosius I, ruling Illyricum and the Danube regions as Magister Militum, while his father was a friend and lifelong ally of Aetius, Rome's legendary commander, who famously stopped Attila and his Huns in the Battle of the Catalaunian Plains, which we covered in depth in a previous video. These political connections undoubtedly benefited Majorian, who joined Aetius's army at a very young age. As he matured, he excelled on the battlefield as a leader and tactician, quickly rising through the ranks, and by his early 20s, he was one of Aetius's best commanding officers and a member of his personal staff.
I've never heard of Majorian, which, you know, that doesn't say anything. So on the grand scheme of things in terms of the Roman Empire, is he a top 10? Is he was good, but, you know, in this small window, but he wasn't anything fantastic in terms of the other names. I'm just curious kind of as to where to place him. I know it sounds kind of rude. Where would you rank him? I don't mean it like that, but, you know, was he considered one of the greats, or was he just good in his time? If that makes sense.
Among his early military achievements, in 445, Majorian defeated the Frankish siege of Tor, suppressed a Bargaudi revolt in Armorica in early 448, and with Aetius in overall command, Majorian led the cavalry in a successful ambush of the Franks at Vicus Helena in late 448. Unsurprisingly, Emperor Valentinian III took note of the young rising star and considered the possibility of marrying his...
Sorry, that's a lot of territory. I saw him up here and I was like, that's like around France, isn't it? And that would be the UK. Man, that's a lot of property. That's got to annoy him, though. What did I just say? Let me say it again. Let me try to say it again. That's got to annoy him. That's a big territory. Wow.
Daughter Placidia to Majorian. Because Valentinian had no male heirs, having Majorian as son-in-law would solve the problem of succession and would leave the empire in the hands of a capable general. In addition, it would strengthen Valentinian's position against other powerful generals, such as Aetius, who used his armies to exert enormous influence over the emperor. But, needless to say, Valentinian's intention to marry his daughter to Majorian clashed with Aetius's own dynastic ambitions. The Roman general wanted to marry his own son Gaudentius to Placidia, and thus secure his family's ties to the imperial throne. Being the most powerful man in the West, Aetius could afford to openly oppose Valentinian's plan, and he ended Majorian's military career, expelled him from his staff, and retired him to his country estate in 450.
Oh, damn.
Majorian would re-enter public life only 4 years later, in 454. In that year, Valentinian assassinated Aetius, but fearful that the dead general's troops would revolt, he recalled Majorian into service to take command of Aetius's army and quell any dissent.
So he gets kicked out for 4 years. He just goes on to be a normal citizen? He didn't, I mean, did he become a politician? Or, I mean, he went home to his estate, so I'm guessing he just lived like a regular person. That's always fascinating to me. I don't know why, it's just fascinating.
However, Valentinian was himself assassinated the following year by 2 former members of Aetius's staff. Without an heir to the throne, many candidates were considered for the title of emperor during the chaos of the interregnum, Majorian being one of them. But the title of emperor went to Petronius Maximus, who managed to outmaneuver other candidates. He was the very senator who first persuaded Valentinian to kill Aetius, and was then involved in orchestrating the murder of Emperor Valentinian himself.
Of course he was, yeah.
To consolidate power, Petronius forced Licinia Eudoxia, the widow of Valentinian and daughter of Theodosius II, the Eastern Roman emperor, to marry him. But his accession was not recognized by the court of Constantinople. Furthermore, he promoted Majorian to commander-in-chief of the imperial guard. But Petronius's rule wouldn't be long. Mere weeks after ascending the throne, he received word that Gaiseric, the Vandal king, was sailing for Italy. As panic gripped the city, the emperor attempted to escape, but amidst the chaos he was separated from his bodyguards. He rode out of the city on his own, where he was caught by an angry mob and stoned to death.
Damn!
The Vandal army landed 3 days later, capturing Rome and sacking the city for weeks. Temples, public buildings, private houses, and even the emperor's palace were stripped of valuables. Worse, ships were loaded with Roman citizens who were transported to Africa to be sold as slaves, and the Empress Licinia was taken into captivity along with her daughters.
Uh-oh.
This plunged the empire into a political crisis, and cracks widened in the imperial framework. This would make it difficult for any future emperor to maintain hold on power and to govern successfully, because he would require support from key areas, namely the Roman Senate and the army in Italy. The Gallo-Roman...
I'm sorry. Another stupid question. What's the distance here? You're going to, I don't know, put it in kilometers or whatever, and I can always change that to miles to figure it out. But the reason why I ask is because I know a lot of times I'll do a lot of like Julius Caesar, you know, and there was always raids coming off of here. My main question, it was how far of a way of a distance is this? And this. I mean, even that, like, I know that there's a split there. These aren't, if nobody answers, I'm not going to be upset. I'm refusing to do videos until I find out the answer, because I could always look it up myself. But I'm just curious if anyone knows, because in my mind, I could stand here and see the land over there, but I'm sure I probably couldn't. I know I probably... You couldn't see that. Anyway, I'm sorry. Unrelated.
An aristocracy and the army in Gaul. The Federate allies, most notably the Visigoths, Burgundians, Franks, and the Alans. The army in Dalmatia, commanded by Marcellinus, a Roman patrician, general, and a staunch ally of the assassinated general Aetius. And lastly, the Eastern Empire could provide legitimacy, diplomatic influence, as well as military and financial aid. Failing to secure support from these groups, the position of the central government in the West would remain weak and at risk of civil war. In the wake of the political turmoil after Petronius's death, His Magister Militum Avitus, a prominent Gallo-Roman aristocrat, found himself in Toulouse. A personal friend and ally of the Visigothic ruling family, Avitus was probably on a diplomatic mission at the court of King Theodoric II to reaffirm his federate status and his support for the new emperor. It was in Toulouse that Avitus received news about the sack of Rome and the death of Emperor Petronius. Seeing this as an opportunity to strengthen his own position within the empire, King Theodoric quickly acclaimed Avitus as emperor in Toulouse. Subsequently, just weeks later, Gallic chiefs gathered near Arelate to proclaim him emperor in Gaul. While on his way to Rome, around August the 5th, Avitus's accession was hesitantly recognized by the Roman Senate and most of the Western Empire. But Marcellinus, commander of the army in Dalmatia, broke away and seized control of the province. He was an ally of Majorian and Ricimer, a Romanized Germanic general, and all three faithfully served under the assassinated Flavius Aetius. Exploiting the turmoil in Rome, Vandal raids continued across the Mediterranean, and Capua was sacked in spring of 456. But the Romans were victorious in Sicily and in a naval encounter near Corsica. Still, Avitus lacked an imperial fleet strong enough to launch a full-scale invasion against the Vandal kingdom. In the west, the Suebi attacked Tarraconensis, pushing as far as the Pyrenees Mountains. Avitus called upon the Visigoths to aid the empire. Seeing an opportunity to expand his realm, Theodoric answered the emperor's call and advanced deep into Suebi territory before achieving a decisive victory at the river Urbicus. The Visigothic king nominally restored the empire in Hispania, but counting that he won't face opposition from his ally Avitus, he became the de facto ruler of Roman lands in Spain. Meanwhile, in Italy, resentment grew against Avitus, whom the populace considered a foreigner, given that he was chosen by the Visigoths. The emperor did little to help his cause by mostly appointing his Gallo-Roman aristocratic friends to key imperial offices, causing discontent among the Roman elite, who were used to filling these important government positions. Worse, after the devastation of Rome by the Vandals, the population suffered from a severe food shortage. This was compounded by the presence of Avitus's Gallo-Roman and barbarian Visigothic troops that needed to be fed. To calm the situation, Avitus agreed to disband the Visigoths, but in order to pay them, he had to melt bronze statues from across the city because the imperial treasury was nearly empty. With half of his troops gone, the emperor was left vulnerable. Observing the unfolding crisis, Majorian and Ricimer, both popular with their own troops, rebelled against Avitus and instructed the Roman Senate to depose him. The emperor marched out of Rome at once, in an attempt to cross into Gaul before he was trapped in Italy. He sent messengers to recall the Visigoths, whom he had disbanded just recently. But he was intercepted near Placentia, where he suffered a crushing defeat and was captured and killed soon after. Furious with Avitus's demise, his many allies rose against Rome. The Gallo-Roman aristocracy broke away from the empire. The Visigoths invaded Septimania and officially ended their federate status. The Burgundians advanced into the Rhone Valley. It was now up to the new Eastern Roman Emperor, Leo I, to select a colleague in the west. But he failed to do so, perhaps planning to rule alone. Leo appointed Majorian as Magister Militum and Ricimer as Patricius and Magister Militum, tasking them with governing Italy in his name. A precarious equilibrium was restored, but Majorian's rise to the imperial throne was almost certain, since his barbarian colleague Ricimer was ineligible. Things came to a head when a small Alemanni raid was defeated by Berco, one of Majorian's officers. The victory was exaggerated and celebrated as Majorian's own, providing enough political momentum for his acclamation as emperor on April 1st, 457, with weak approval from the Senate. Soon after, he departed south when word came that an army led by Geiseric's brother-in-law landed in Campania and began devastating the region. Majorian personally led the Roman army and defeated the Vandals, driving them back to their ships. Majorian now understood how vulnerable Italy was. He rushed a series of reforms to stop corruption with tax collection and prevent oppression of the provincials. These reforms faced opposition from the corrupt aristocracy, but it stabilized Rome's finances with a stream of revenue going into imperial coffers. With these funds, Majorian financed the defense of Italy, recruiting large numbers of barbarian mercenaries to protect the peninsula from Vandal attacks. But most importantly, recognizing that the recovery of the rich province of Africa would both solve Rome's financial woes and secure its southern flank, he began building 2 fleets in preparation to invade the Vandal kingdom. Next, Majorian successfully negotiated with Marcellinus the return of Dalmatia into the imperial fold. Now, he was able to muster an army big enough to recover Gaul, leaving Ricimer in charge of the army in Italy. He crossed the Alps and dealt an overwhelming defeat to the Visigoths at Arelate in late 458. Severely weakened, Theodoric fled and was left with no choice but to return Septimania and Hispania to Rome and accept federate status within the empire, which obliged him to provide troops to the emperor. Majorian placed one of his closest lieutenants, Nepotianus, in charge of Hispania before marshalling his army into the Rhone Valley, where he defeated the Burgundians at Lugdunum.
I think I'm yawning a lot because I'm tired of all the walking that they have to do to go all over this place. I mean, I know we're talking about it started out in what, 450? So we're talking about an 11-year span, but that's not a short distance to travel. That is a lot of walking. Can you imagine the blisters they had on their feet? Oh. And I know, some rode on horses, yeah, but still. It's not a car, not a train, not a helicopter, not a plane. It's a lot of walking. Right?
Not wanting to punish the Gallo-Roman aristocracy for siding with Avitus, he used diplomacy to reintegrate Gaul back into the empire. He left Aegidius, another one of his trusted officers, in charge of Gaul.
Guy looks like a zombie.
By the end of 458, Majorian had effective control over the Western Empire. Next, he enlisted Marcellinus to marshal his army of Huns to Sicily. Meanwhile, Majorian marched to Hispania and ordered the fleet to assemble at Portus Ilicatanus in preparation for an invasion of Africa. He had put the plan for the full restoration of imperial territories into motion. Marcellinus recovered Sicily and remained there to defend the island and prepare for a possible crossing into Africa. To the west, Majorian consolidated Roman control of Hispania before recovering much of the Suebi territory. He turned back to Portus Ilicatanus to meet with his fleet. The invasion of the Vandal kingdom was meticulously planned, with extensive intelligence gathered on Geiseric's army and navy. The Vandal king tried negotiating with Majorian, but the Roman emperor refused. Fearing the invasion was imminent, Gaiseric strengthened Mauritania, thinking that the Romans would land there, and also prepared naval patrols in the waters near the probable invasion area. Finally, Majorian reached Portus Ilicatanus, but the barbarian Germanic king in Africa had one last trick up his sleeve. He managed to bribe traitors, possibly Majorian's political opponents, to sabotage the Roman fleet. Much of it was destroyed, and many ships were captured by the Vandals. The invasion was cancelled, and Majorian marched back to Arelate, his base of operation in Gaul. Meanwhile, in Italy, his barbarian colleague and friend Ricimer gathered around himself sections of the aristocracy who opposed the emperor. Majorian's legislative reforms had shown that he intended to intervene decisively on issues that plagued the empire, which interfered with the interests of the corrupt and powerful Roman politicians. After spending some time in Arelate, Majorian disbanded his mercenary army and, accompanied only by his retinue, set off to Rome, where he intended to continue implementing his reforms and renew preparations for the recovery of the province of Africa. Ricimer rode out with a military detachment to meet the emperor. Majorian had no reason to suspect his friend, together with whom, in the years past, he used to dream about restoring the glory of Rome. But when the two met, Ricimer arrested Majorian and deposed him. The emperor was stripped of his dress and diadem, beaten and tortured. 5 days later, he was dragged to the river Iria, where he was beheaded and his body discarded. He was only between 35 and 40 years old. Acting as kingmaker, Ricimer took control over the empire by placing on the imperial throne a puppet whom he could easily manipulate, selected to please the corrupt senatorial aristocracy. But the great advances made by Majorian were quickly lost. His loyal lieutenants, Aegidius in Gaul and Nepotianus in Hispania, broke with the empire, furious at the treachery committed against the late emperor. Marcellinus also broke away, seizing both Sicily and Dalmatia, and he would later expel the Vandals from Sardinia. The Visigoths, Burgundians, and the Vandals expanded into imperial territories that the young emperor fought so hard to restore. Majorian would be remembered as a brilliant strategist and a capable statesman who was determined to devote his life to fully restoring Roman prosperity and authority in the West. He is described as a great and heroic character, the likes of which sometimes arise in a degenerate age to vindicate the honor of the human species. He was the only man who managed to effectively hold imperial office during the 5th century and at the same time had a claim to greatness. Majorian's short 4-year reign proved to be Rome's last chance to rally behind a capable emperor. Just 15 years after his death, the Western Roman Empire would officially cease to exist.
Wow.
Thank you so much for watching.
Wow. That stinks too. because he didn't come off as a tyrant. He came off as a guy who defended Rome. He is worth admiring as the last truly great ruler in the history of the Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. You know what he is? He's a what if. What if he wasn't killed and he was allowed to go back to Rome and implement things? They lasted 15 years after his death, which you could pretty much say his death was like the 15-year window. I mean, his death pretty much closed that, and they were just like, this 15 years, I mean, they didn't say 15 years, but this remaining time that we have, that's it. Sometimes there are just good people that get taken out, and you know, it's the what if. We have James Garfield, the 20th president, James Garfield, and he is considered he's called the what if president, because he was a guy who got along with everyone, had ideas, and 6 months in, I believe, he was shot and ended up dying after that. And he was replaced by Chester A. Arthur. Really didn't do anything. I told a story about Chester A. Arthur. I can put it in the comments. It was just a story of him being really sad, and then coming across Ulysses S. Grant on a train. And Ulysses S. Grant didn't say anything to him. But I guess I'm telling the story. I'm really short. I'm making it short. They were the two kind of former presidents on this train with Garfield's body coming back. And they finally arrived, and Arthur had tried he tried to hide his tears, but Grant didn't care, didn't say anything to him. And then Grant stood up to get off the train, and he put his hand on his shoulder, and he said, "I know how it feels to lose a friend." And he was referring to Abraham Lincoln. And then he stood up, and he took a step back, and he waited for Chester A. Arthur, who is now acting president, to stand up and lead the way. He refused to walk out first. The president should walk out first. And so I thought that was just a very respectful, very just nice, polite. Didn't criticize him. In fact, Ulysses S. Grant never, when the only people who ever knew that story existed were Arthur and Grant. Grant didn't even tell his family, because that's not what you do in that situation. And so, you know, he kept it quiet, president to president. And the only reason why that got out was because Chester A. Arthur had golfing buddies after he retired, and he told them the story, and they were like, "Really?" And he was like, "Yeah." Never said anything, and he had so much respect for him for that. Because Grant could have, you know, "Oh, look at this guy, he's over here crying," but Grant knew. Grant, you know, wept for Lincoln. What are you doing? You just listening to that story? She was just enjoying the story. So we're going to end this here. We're going to end this here. Going to end it. Going to end the video. You're lucky you're cute. Okay, there's a thanks button on the channel. You can donate. If you do donate, well, hold on. There's a thanks button on the channel. You can donate. We need to be fed, because we don't got no food. And we need toys. And I can't say that word, Treats, because they know what it means. And then they'll start barking and fighting. And You're lucky you're cute. So, I mean, your donations go to helping keep them alive. I was joking. Jesus, you're a cutie. And subscribe if you like more of these things. So I had promised to do the 100. Well, I didn't promise, but somebody wanted me to do the 100 Years' War, and I just saw that it was like 3.5 hours. It was a big release, so I think I'm gonna go after that sometime soon. But that doesn't matter now. So I'm gonna let her down. Get off there. Okay. Pinched her. Okay. So I'm gonna end this here, and until next time, have a good day. Have a good night.